Welcome to this special breaking edition of Eye for Iran. Tel Aviv has been hit after Iran launched missiles at the heart of Israel, following Israeli military strikes inside Iran, in Tehran, and several cities across the country, striking Iran's nuclear capabilities, some top nuclear scientists, as well as Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps members. The question is, what's next? We have an exclusive interview with Amichai Chikli. Now, he's an Israeli politician who's the current Minister of Diaspora Affairs. We also spoke with Dr. Eric Mandel on the geopolitics and Major Andrew Fox on the military angle. I'm Negar Moshehedi, and this is Eye for Iran. Amichai Chikli, an Israeli politician who is currently serving as the Minister of Diaspora Affairs at the Israeli government, joins us now. Thank you for being here. How did you plan for such a massive operation?
A very hard work of the intelligence, the army intelligence, Mossad intelligence. Thousands of people are involved. This is not an operation that was planned in months. It's an operation that it took years to prepare, and it's also important to notice that this is just the beginning of the operation, and we are facing, let's say, complicated days ahead, and we need to stay alert. And this is not over yet. And Iran still has capabilities to fire ballistic missiles, drones, cruise missiles, as we saw in the past, and we need to stay alert and to stay modest. The mission is not completed.
And when you say this mission is incomplete, what do you mean exactly by that?
The main mission is to prevent Iran for getting nuclear capabilities. The nuclear capabilities of Iran, unlike what we saw in Iraq or what we saw in Syria, is not located in one base. It's not just in Natanz, it's not just in Fordow. There are dozens of sites in which they hold their capabilities, and we need to reach each and every one of those sites. We have the people who are the heads, the minds, the scientists who are leading this program of Iran nuclear capabilities, the heads of the Revolutionary Guards. Luckily, we have managed to hit some very strategic personnel, scientists, etc. And I think it's a major development. And I think that although it was not a secret that Israel is is capable and want to act against Iran nuclear program, the Iranians didn't really understood the timing, and they didn't really understood the methods and who exactly will be target. And that's, I think, it's a positive development. And but still, as I mentioned, it's not over yet. They still have ballistic missiles. We haven't managed to hit their entire arsenal of ballistic missiles, and therefore we need to be very alert and to be very accurate now and very tough in order to finish this mission.
Here at Iran International, we get a lot of messages from within Iran, people who are demanding regime change, and they were asking and wondering why Israel didn't do more. They were hoping that the targets would be more from the political echelons of the Iranian establishment. What is your message to them?
The main message is people are our enemies. The Iranian people are not our enemies. The Revolutionary Guards, the fanatic people who are torturing innocent people, killing young women for not wearing a hijab, hanging on homosexuals. These people, these terrorists, these are our enemies, and we are fighting the war against the Revolutionary Guard, against the revolution, against the Islamic Revolution, and not against the Iranian people. And I think that there won't be a better Iranian people to do something with the Revolutionary Guard. This is the time to seize the moment and to try and take back your country from the Revolutionary Guards. And it takes a lot of guts and leadership. But I think that's These days are dramatic, not just in terms of military, but also in terms of the civilian in Iran. Will they use this moment to change the course of history or not?
So you said that the mission is incomplete. You also said that this mission is about Iran's nuclear capabilities. So does this mean that potentially down the road that the mission would entail regime change?
I think and I believe that a regime change can happen only with the Iranian people. We cannot do the work of the Iranian people. We can assist, we can help, and I think that these kind of attacks are a major blow for the self-confidence of Khamenei, the self-confidence of the barbaric leadership that we currently have in Iran, and this is the time for true leaders in Iran to act and do their part in order to achieve a better future for the children and for the youth in Iran that deserve to live free, happy, without these terrorists running their lives.
What can we expect to see in the coming days? How long is this going to carry on for?
So first, obviously, when it comes to future plans, we cannot discuss it here. I'm sure that there will be attempt from the Iranian Revolutionary Guards to strike Israel, to fire ballistic missiles, hundreds of ballistic missiles if they can. We have managed in the second wave of the attacks to hit some of these ballistic missile stock and also the launchers of these ballistic missiles. But as I said, it is not a total annihilation of the ballistic capabilities of Iran, and therefore I'm assuming that we will see missiles attack towards Israel. Obviously, if there are ballistic capabilities left in Gaza with the Houthis, etc., they might join as well, including their militias in Iraq, etc. Everything, all the proxies of Iran, and obviously everything that Iran can throw into the war, they will throw it now. That's for sure.
Do you have any final thoughts?
We believe in the Iranian people. We believe that we can have peace between our nations. By the way, I'm in charge of anti-Semitism, and when you check the level of anti-Semitism in Iran, it's the lowest level in the Middle East, about 50%, unlike 97% in the Palestinian Authority, 95% in Bahrain, almost 90% in Egypt. So I think that there's a natural bond between our people, and I'm very hopeful that we can see a change, that we can see the Iranian opposition taking action, seizing the moment. History will not forgive if will not forgive those who will not operate now, because I don't think that there's going to be a better moment for the Iranian opposition.
Actually, I do have one more question. The name of the operation, the Rising Lion. Talk about the significance, the symbolism of the name for the Iranian people and for the Israelis and for the history of the ancient Persians and the Jewish people.
So and obviously the lion is the symbol of the original flag of Iran. We know it, but in Hebrew, in the Bible, there's a story about a prophet. His name is Bil'am, who was trying to curse the people of Israel, and instead of cursing, God's put in his mouth a blessing, and the blessing was in Hebrew. הנה עם כלביא יקום וכארי יתנשא. Here's a nation that will rise as a lion. So that is the story, the biblical story.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's almost Shabbat, so thank you
Thank you,
again.
Negar.
So
Thank you.
have a lovely day.
Shabbat
Thank you
shalom.
again. Shabbat shalom.
May God bless the people of Iran and give you courage to act.
Dr. Eric Mandel, thank you so much for joining us on this special edition of Eye for Iran.
It's a pleasure to be here, and we are at one of the most pivotal days, maybe in Middle East history, certainly in the last 100 years, and certainly the last 46 years if you're an Iranian.
What do you make of everything? I mean, what a night. I don't think anybody really slept.
Well, I guess let's just take a step back. There is an amazing strategic opportunity here. Iran is at its weakest in its 46 years. Iran, I should say, the Islamic Republic, not obviously the civilization of Iran, but the Islamic Republic is at its weakest point in 46 years. And that includes during the 80s, during the Iran-Iraq war, where really Iran was destabilized. And you have a unique opportunity here where you've had ongoing internal dissent, economic collapse, loss of the proxies and the potency of the proxies, combined with this surprise attack, which just in the symbolism alone makes Iran, the regime, look much more vulnerable. Maybe there's some analogy. People thought the Assad regime, granted, there's no real comparison, was much stronger than it was, and then you saw in just days it collapsed. Is it possible that the Iranian regime is that weak? We know they're as brutal as the Assad regime, what they do to their own people. But I think this is a unique, profound strategic opportunity. And the big question is, what will President Trump do? Not what the Israelis will do. What will the president do with what Israel has handed to them? Will he use it as leverage to create a diplomatic deal and leave the Iranian regime in power? Or will he see this as an opportunity to really do something about the Middle East? And that means regime change. And by the way, behind the scenes, your viewers should not listen to comments, whether from Lebanon or Saudi Arabia. Those countries publicly will say, we condemn an Israeli preemptive strike. Behind the scenes, they are happy. They're applauding. They fear Iran as much or more, of what they can do. So this is an opportunity. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, whether to the Israeli people or what Israel plans to do in strikes. But what will America do? And as somebody who literally yesterday, hours before, was briefing the Senate and an incoming Deputy Secretary of Defense on this and discussing this, what will America do? Will we act more isolationist and let the Israelis go it alone, or we take advantage of what they did? And that's what I tell. I'm more of I will say basically a security-minded internationalist. And I'm also believing that the best for American national security is to be with the Iranian people. This is the time to say we are with the Iranian people.
And based on your conversations with these American officials, like you said, you spoke to somebody just, I guess, hours before Israel's strike in Iran, and you are in touch with Israeli officials as well. What are you hearing?
Well, I just came back from Israel, so I got a chance to be with think tanks and with intelligence, defense, security people. Israel, after being there for the last 25 years, I found them the most confident that they can do a profound a tactical strike that could lead to a strategic change. And the Israelis sounded.
And what gave you that hint?
You talk to people, and this is one of the reasons I go into the region, whether I go and I'm talking with the Israelis or the Qataris or the Saudis or the Egyptians, you talk to them and you listen, and you also have to know culturally how people respond. But the Israelis, I know, are the best of all those groups, and you can tell from body language, from how of just the confidence in their tone, not hubris by any stretch. They realize the difficulty, but it was that we can do this. We can do this by ourselves. We do need American behind-the-scenes intelligence and auxiliary logistical support, especially when the Iranians are likely to respond. But we can do this. The question really was, if it was not, at least as of now, less than 24 hours in, considered an amazing success, how would America still be standing strong with Israel? And was this all coordinated? The president now is claiming that this was day 61. He said, you have 60 days, Iran, to get in line and make a nuclear deal. And now he's saying, this was 61. We told you had 60 days. And even though he supposedly told Israel that we don't want you to strike while negotiations were going on, in fact, there was one coming up in Oman in a few days, was this a great ruse? Or are we Americans just taking advantage of Israel doing what it needed to do for its existential interests?
Weeks prior to this, we had been reporting at Iran International, I mean, all major outlets, that there were apparent tensions between President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Was that all a show then?
Uh, I don't think it was all a show. I think the president was getting two different levels of advice. Just if you look back to make it stark, in the first administration, he had people like Mike Pompeo and Vice President Pence who would be applauding this action publicly right away and would have been advocating for it. Today, the president, if you would have looked at what our intelligence chief, Tulsi Gabbard, had done a video last week that was basically warning of an apocalypse of the if Israel, the implication was if Israel attacked Iran, that it would be irresponsible, and you could have Hiroshima and all these kind of things. So who was in the presidency ear at any given time? It was the Tucker Carlson wing of isolationism. He in particular has tremendous seemingly animosity against Israel, and really was seemed to be wanted to appease and seemed to be defending Iran more than anything else. Or was it maybe Marco Rubio? Marco Rubio, I had many relations with many of his foreign policy people over many years. And, basically the Marco Rubio that I knew back then and his team would be happy this is going on. Although his initial statement, because he works at the pleasure of the president, was we had nothing to do with this. Is that true or not? I think time will tell. Doesn't matter at this point of time. The real question here is, in the next phase, is Iran, and I think Iranians are still pretty smart, but even though the command structure has been tremendously weakened, will Iran strike American assets? If Iranian assets are struck, then America could retaliate. And would the president make a phone call to Diego Garcia, where our B-2 bombers with the massive ordinances are, and attack the one place that hasn't been attacked, as we know, which is the deeply buried enrichment facility in Fordow?
Should the Western world then be on high alert for potential sleeper cells?
There's no doubt there are sleeper cells throughout the world for Iran, and I think certainly Jewish targets in the Jewish diaspora should be on high alert. I think American targets and any group or country that somehow supports Israel through the Iranian eyes should be on high alert. So I think the next few weeks at the minimum, there should be some high alert. I don't expect an attack from Iran here because I really don't think that the Iranians want to poke the tiger of the United States, because the president could act quickly and he could if America joins in, which I think would be a smart move to take advantage of this once in a generation or multi-generation opportunity. It will do the most thing to stabilize the Middle East in the long run, not create a regional war, but help the Iranian people. And then if we help the Iranian people, we should be there, not with boots on the ground, which is what the Tucker Carlson world would say, but no, with Starlink to help them talk to one another and do all kinds of things to help both the Persians and the 45% non-Persian minorities that have had their human rights so abused by this authoritarian regime that, and again, the Iranian people, I believe, would be the most pro-Western people other than the Israelis, if only given the chance. And how would that help American national security interests? And the message around the world would be to the Chinese: we stand with our allies, we stand for democracy. This reverberates this is not just, things don't stay in the Middle East. So this is also a time for the United States to show strength.
I was just reading that there are reports that Israel tricked the top commander of Iran's Air Force into a meeting and then kept him there in order to eliminate him. Based on what you know of Mossad's operations, I know that you were part of the book Target Tehran as well, that goes into detail about all of that. What do you know of Mossad's operations in Iran? Without giving away anything, obviously, but just how they operate in a very general terms.
Listen, they have a Iranian populace that wants to work with them. Now, from the Iranian regime, even if it wasn't true, the Iranian regime believes Mossad is everywhere and has penetrated everything. And all of a sudden, that makes even people who are loyal look suspicious. which makes them be on the defensive. So that alone, because when you look at the history of it, Israel has had to do over time, like how did it get all those years ago the Sputnik virus in when Fordow was just found? There had to be spies within Iran. So Mossad and probably other intelligence services, but mainly Mossad is probably involved deeply in Iran for a very long time, because you have very unlike, and because I try to keep these things, but we don't know what's going on, very unlike the Palestinian population that doesn't really want to work with the Israelis or is fearful. The Iranian people may be very fearful. They don't want to be in Evin prison or have their families threatened or killed. That the Iranian people want to be free. They want to make their choice. We don't want to impose anything there. We should be making that. We want the Iranian people, and we'll take our chances of whatever they want. So is Mossad there? It's hard not to believe. Are they there deeply penetrated? Absolutely. I wouldn't say any more than that, but I don't think anybody believes anything less than that.
And what's really astonishing is if you look at the aftermath and the photos, you can see that a lot of the, penthouses of these Tehran towers have been taken out. So they obviously know where these men are living. I mean, what do you think about that? And how precise their hits were?
Smaller enemy, because they underestimated. Here, Israel has never underestimated both Hezbollah, its major proxy, and certainly did not underestimate the head of the octopus here as the primary existential threat, and has put in the resources and the time to know what's going on. And so that just shows the amazing Israeli intelligence of Iran, and how much, I think it says, that the Iranian people were helpful. This is not purely Israelis. This is Iranians who want to break free, whether ones, I'm talking about ones within the country would have to be the ones, doing this. We're not talking about, obviously, a diaspora that, would like it to change, an Iranian diaspora, but we're talking about within the country. There are many, many people. And, granted, in an authoritarian regime, you never know exactly what the percentage is against the regime, but I think it's a safe bet to believe that 70, the vast majority of Iranians want this regime to go away.
Well, thank you so much. That's Dr. Eric Mandel, and I'm sure we'll be checking in with you in the coming days. There's definitely more to come.
Right, and I wish the Iranian people, both in the diaspora and in Iran, strength and hope. And that America, that we could be open friends again for our national security interests. And so thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Major Andrew Fox, for joining us on this special edition of Eye for Iran. Andrew, is this the beginning of the end?
Well, I think we can hope so. The Israelis at the moment are focused on military targets and infrastructure. They've reasonably left the political echelon alone, with the exception of a strike on the president's flat. His apartment was struck, knowing it was empty. But it sends a very clear message, I think, that it's a time for Iran to either make a deal and actually play ball in terms of their nuclear facilities, or they're going to be taken off the map.
What do you make of the targets then?
They make perfect military sense, I think. The first wave was against personnel. So the nuclear scientists, the IRGC, the chief of staff, and it was effectively a decapitation of Iran's military capability, including the entire Air Force general staff. It's believed were all together in a bunker when one missile hit. And the next waves of attacks then focused on the various infrastructure sites. Clearly, the outstanding issue for this is Fordow, where they've got a half a mile underground site underneath a mountain, and we know Israel is not believed to have the capability to strike that deep. So the centrifuges there have been the primary centrifuge. Natanz has been scaled back over recent years. So what happens there is going to be the bigger question.
Given your military background and expertise, what do you make of the fact that IRGC officials, nuclear scientists were targeted? I mean, that seems to be the big thing that people are talking about right now in Iran.
Well, the nuclear capability is the reason this happened. Yes, Iran is behind a huge amount of, well, almost all of the violence that's happened against Israel over the last 20 months. But the nuclear threshold is one that Iran could not be allowed to pass. The regime in Tehran are far too malign to be trusted with a nuclear weapon. And therefore, militarily, it makes perfect sense. If you're trying to attack the nuclear facilities, you attack the people who are making those nukes as well as the facilities they use to make them.
So we're hearing, I think Reuters was reporting approximately 20 kind of Iranian senior officials that have been eliminated by Israel. So it doesn't sound like they're not, are they that significant then in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the stability of the Iranian regime itself? What do you make of that?
I mean, there's a lot of people to replace. You know, the scientists are going to be the really tricky one. You can't just promote a scientist to be suddenly a world-leading nuclear specialist. So that will be the really tricky part. The generals, obviously, there can be people promoted into their jobs, so that's less impactful. But it does send a very clear message. It shows that Israel can do essentially what it wants, and it sends a message to certainly the supreme leader and the president. That they could have been taken out if Israel wanted to. So, you know, this messaging is important. The bottom line here is that regime change is a very long-term goal. The short-term aim has to be focusing on making sure Iran doesn't gain a nuclear weapon capability, and everything we're seeing that's happening at the moment has been worked towards that aim. So yes, it's about the nuclear capability. If they'd been serious about regime change, then Khamenei and the president would have been fully in scope for targeting. The fact that hasn't happened, the fact that Donald Trump is talking about giving Iran another opportunity to make a deal, I suggest that's the horse trade that Israel made with Washington. Is 60 days ago when Bibi was in the White House. He clearly wanted to strike Iran sooner. Mr. Trump clearly persuaded him to wait 60 days to give the Americans a chance to negotiate. Iran, I don't think, understood the threat they were under militarily, didn't play ball, didn't come anywhere near what President Trump wanted them to come near to. And so here we are with missile strikes. But already Mr. Trump is once again beating the drum of diplomacy and hoping that Iran will now make a deal because they've seen the consequences of not doing so.
So while you think this is all leverage to get the Iranians to a deal and to diplomacy, ironically, by using military strikes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a very deliberate decision by the United States not to take part in these strikes. And it took me a while to work through the problem here, actually, because I couldn't understand why America didn't, because it felt to me like a good opportunity for the US to show the consequences of what happens when diplomacy fails, and looks strong in the eyes of certainly the Arab world. And they didn't take that opportunity because what letting Israel take the lead has done is created that diplomatic space for Washington to conduct more negotiations. Even though Iran have pulled out from Sundays, that's understandable given the absolute disarray that they're going to be in. There is going to be another round of talks, I suggest, before we see an end to Israeli airstrikes, or possibly just afterwards.
And so, in some ways, was this strike, I know this is going to sound strange, but in some ways, was it like a form of communication almost, like the way that people communicate in the Middle East?
Yes, I mean, the Middle East respects strength, we know that. I think it's a better way to frame it is if we look at the levers of government, we have economic, diplomatic, and military. Obviously, sanctions haven't worked. And then diplomacy hasn't worked, and so we turn to the military option, and that's a usual sort of a recognised pathway of escalation. I think Mr. Trump would have preferred a deal. I think if Iran had shown any common sense, they'd have given him a bone that he could have taken away and called a win. They didn't do that, and so here we are at the military solution.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.